Back home, arrest me, says J.K. Rowling of Scotland's new anti-hate laws. In a series of social media posts, the Harry Potter author described several prominent transgender women as men, including convicted prisoners, trans activists, and other public figures. Living as she does in Edinburgh, she's covered by legislation which came into force today and is inviting police to arrest her if they believe she has committed an offence under said legislation. David Wallace-Lockhart is political correspondent for BBC Scotland. David, this is a political issue, isn't it? Because the First Minister says this is great legislation and he's standing by it.
Yeah, that's right. Humza Yousaf, of course, a strong backer of this legislation. He was Justice Secretary when it went through the Scottish Parliament back in 2021. And he's firmly of the view it sets a high threshold when it comes to free speech that still allows people to make controversial comments, to offend and to shock. But there are those who have big concerns around free speech. Now, this legislation has been introduced in Scotland. Arguably, the most prominent critic of this legislation is J.K. Rowling. And as you said, the Harry Potter author put a thread on the social media site X, a long thread this afternoon, which is she described various transgender women as men, and ended it saying freedom of speech is at an end if the accurate description of biological sex is deemed criminal. And then she challenged police to arrest her if they thought she had broken the law. So that issue of gender identity has been a divisive issue in Scotland in recent years. This certainly will prove to be divisive comments, but she does have her backers, including the campaign group for Women Scotland. And we can hear now from Susan Smith, one of their directors.
J.K. Rowling's been an incredible support, and she has shown that she's prepared to take the hit for other women and potentially be arrested. She will almost certainly be reported to the police for this. And she knows that she's able to carry the weight of being investigated, potentially being prosecuted in a way that ordinary women can't. So she's really thrown herself into the firing line to protect other women. And I think she's very much put herself out there and said, come and get me first and leave these other women alone. And it's an incredibly brave thing to do. And it means a lot to a lot of women in Scotland.
Yes, and it's a divisive thing, isn't it? Susan Smith is talking there as a supporter of J.K. Rowling. And the point here for many is that the law, which Humza Yousaf likes, doesn't actually protect women as a group from hatred. So he said, I don't know whether or not he thinks he's got to have new laws, a new misogyny law, but the police are in the middle of this. David, do you expect the police to be put into a difficult situation by this difficult politics?
Yeah, you're right there on when we talk about women not being included or biological sex not being included as a protected characteristic in this legislation. Scottish Government does say they plan to bring forward separate legislation to deal with misogyny. But you're right, the police aspect of this has been another area of controversy because the police have made it clear that they do plan to investigate every allegation of hate. That's quite controversial at a time in Scotland when even some low-level crimes, including some low-level thefts, don't get investigated by Police Scotland. So there are voices within the policing community expressing concerns about resources, expressing concerns about how many complaints they're going to have to look at. The First Minister has said that's something police are used to. They're used to getting complaints, working out which ones are criminal and which ones are not going to reach that threshold, so not worth dealing with. But certainly a common concern we're hearing from the policing community about how much extra work this new legislation could potentially put on them.
David Wallace-Lockhart, thank you very much indeed, giving us the briefing. He's our political correspondent for BBC Scotland.